and welcome back to another episode of the UK Glamping podcast, hosted by us here at Glam Protect. So, as usual, this week we have a special guest, but this week we're actually blessed with two special guests. We have with me today Vicki and Bryan, owners and operators of Tractors Cream Glamping. Thanks very much for joining me, guys.
Hi, thanks for having us.
So, I wanted to get Vicki and Bryan on as really kind of a bit of a success story, an example to all our kind of listeners and viewers, because they are open, operating, and by all accounts doing extremely well. Have a fantastic online presence and have been welcoming guests down on in between Taunton and Glastonbury for a good few years now, isn't that right, guys?
Yeah, we've been open we just finished our 8th season, so we're seasonal, so we finished our 8th season in end of October. So I feel like we're in our stride now.
Although it's totally changed since we started to where we are today, because we keep growing it every year, and we started out with yurts, and now we've kind of landed on geodesic domes, and so but each year we try and grow the site bigger, so we've got planning for up to 10, and I think we've just going to this year be putting in, number 9?
Yeah, well,
we've got an event dome as well now.
Yeah, so glamping, it'll be our 6th glamping dome, but we've got other extra like event spaces and stuff. So we're nearly at our capacity.
It's interesting because domes is something that seems to be quite divisive from a planning perspective, depending on what part of the country you're in. Certainly up in Scotland, the Scottish planning offices seem to be really against geodesic domes, and it's something we get asked about a lot, and obviously has quite a large presence at the glamping shows and the different exhibitions that we go to. What made you guys decide to land on that? Was it just what the local office favoured, or was that your preference?
So when we put in for planning permission, we put in for yurts originally, and so the planning officer said that we could have any canvas structure. So they weren't limiting us to yurts, but they basically said no shepherd's huts, no caravans was specifically in our planning. And we think that's because there was a caravan site in our village. So we think that's the only reason we can think that they put that. So we started with the yurts, which is what we put in for, and then realised that yurts were, I love yurts, don't get me wrong, but they are a bit of a pain in the bum with having to take them down every winter and put them back up in the spring.
But also we are very exposed.
Yeah, we had that one time where the wind came through. Bryan was out there with the tractor, tethering the yurt to the tractor, trying to pull it back onto the base.
It was really bad wind, and basically it had hit straight onto the door, and because a yurt kind of itself freestanding, it just pushed the whole thing off the base. And so as you said, I had to go and tether it and basically drag it back with the tractor to stop it from blowing away. And so after that, we were like, okay, what is the most wind-resistant structure that we can find that is canvas? And that was the caveat, it had to be canvas. So we shopped around, spoke to a lot of people, and eventually found Geodomes, which is a UK manufacturer, and they made these really wind-resistant structures. And we were like, let's try them out.
Because the structure itself is so strong, the triangular shape of it, and it's aluminium frame, it's just, it's not going anywhere.
Yeah, they're really impressive structures, actually. The glamping show this year, which obviously what we met you guys at, was my first opportunity to really kind of put my hands on these domes and get a feel for how they would stand up in the kind of rougher weather. And I was really pleasantly surprised by them, because to look at, you wouldn't think they'd stand up to the sort of weather that they do. They're very impressive. And obviously Geodomes being a UK manufacturer, fantastic that you can get them here on home shore. How do you find them in comparison to yurts? When you mentioned that you're seasonal, when does your season run? Do you try and avoid the colder months because they're canvas, or do they retain the heat quite well? How do you find that side of things?
So we open normally Easter weekend, and then we have gone through to sort of October half term, but then it's also getting the balance of we want to go away as a family, so we quite often don't open October half term so that we can go on holiday, because we're a bit fed up by then, to be honest. So we don't open over the winter. 2 reasons. One, I worry that people would freeze to death. Because we haven't put any insulation in the flooring. We've just got the insulation that comes with the dome. We haven't made any other
No Sentex under the floor.
No, exactly.
No underfloor heating.
There's a wood burner, but again, that like in the middle of the night, you don't want to get out of bed in -2 to stoke the wood burner, do you? But also because we're on the Somerset levels and the place floods, like last winter we spent about 10 grand putting drainage in because parts of the field were just completely underwater. We were like putting the kids around in a dinghy because it was so wet. So it's not just the domes, it's the site as well.
Mm-hmm.
And where we are.
Okay, interesting. So were you in when you applied for your planning, were you in a flood risk zone 1, 2 or 3? Because that's something that comes up quite a lot for our clients as they're going through the process.
So I think we're in our house is lower. So our house is in zone 1 or something. Is that the worst? I can't remember. But the field...
Yeah.
So the field slopes upwards. So they were happy with the field having glamping on it, but we said we couldn't have any accommodation that was near our house, which is ridiculous because we're in the house ourselves and they don't mind us living here.
Don't mind you guys, but they don't guest don't. That's one way to look at it.
We have a flood evacuation point that we've had to designate as well, which is up at the highest point of our field. So but the thing is, we're only open during the summer, and we never flood in the summer. It's normally in the winter, and it's not flooding per se. It's just standing water that has to come down and into the drainage ditches and away.
Right, makes sense. I suppose that kind of site layout must help as well a little bit with kind of separation of powers for you to be able to kind of live your own lives and not have your guests necessarily kind of peering through the living room window at night as well. And
oh, well, they still do that.
Well, no, not it definitely helps because they're kind of almost self-contained on the field, and then we've got a barn down the bottom which is like an event space, and it's where when it's pouring with rain they can go and play games and that, and so that's still quite a way away from the house, and so it gives us that nice feeling of we're close enough if something goes wrong, but also we're far enough that we have our own space, except when the kids are out on the trampoline or whatever, and then the other kids think, hey, I want to go and play too.
Yes, we have had to adjust things. So we had the kids had the trampoline in the play area in quite a visible spot for the guests, and our kids are really sociable, so they would just take whoever was on the field and go, oh, come play on our play equipment, come play on our trampoline. And I was like, insurance is not going to cover if a kid falls off our personal trampoline. So we had to sort of move it away. As the kids have got older, we've sort of explained, you can't just bring random children into our play area. It just doesn't work like that. So we even put a trampoline on the field so that our kids would go up there and play with the kids rather than bringing them down to ours, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. And it makes all the sense in the world. I think it's a question that we get asked a lot is whether or not it's okay to live on site, whether or not they should, and what kind of separation people suggest. So it's always interesting to hear from different client perspectives how they've found that experience with their guests, and how actively involved are you guys day to day in the kind of running and upkeep of the site? Do you take care of all the laundry and kind of changeovers yourselves, or do you outsource that?
No, we do everything. Well, Brian still has a full-time job, so when he's working from home, I'm like, right, it's your lunch break, off you go and do some mowing, or he just gets dragged into it whenever he has a chance. But otherwise, we actually built a purpose-built laundry room with 2 industrial washing machines and 2 industrial tumble dryers so that we could do the laundry ourselves, because we looked at the cost of sending it away, and per dome it was going to be £40 to £50, whereas I can do it for sort of £3 or £4. So it made sense for us to kind of put that facility in. So me and a team of sort of casual staff will do all the changeovers. So we're really heavily involved. We check every single guest in ourselves. We don't do any contactless check-in, mainly because the site's quite complicated in its layout. Not complicated, but there's a lot to see. You want to be able to show them where the communal areas are, where they can go and say, go and explore the woodland. There's a treasure hunt for the kids. Talk them through the whole thing. And that was kind of born off the back of us going away when we were kind of doing a recce as to whether we wanted to start a glamping site. We went and stayed in a yurt, and we got there. We didn't know where we were going. We didn't know where the yurt was. We didn't know where the toilets were. We didn't see anybody. Yeah. There was no fire guard around the fires, no carbon monoxide alarm. There was just Like all these different things, we were like, okay, well, if we do this, we're going to do this, 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 and this. So that was a really useful experience for us. And I think I'd recommend anybody who's thinking about it to go and stay in a few different places and see what they learn from it.
But also, I think that the guests really get something from you meeting them, because they have a face that they can put to. So if there's an issue, they're not worried about, who am I going to contact? They know straight away, I've got an issue, I go and speak to Vicki. And you've made that, you've reduced that barrier so that they can come and straight speak to you because they know who you are.
I know, I'd rather they told me something was up during their stay than then go through and suffer whatever it is, be it a spider or whatever, and then give us a bad review afterwards. So it's definitely, like, we've never had a negative review, touch wood. I think because we've got that person interaction all the time.
Well, there was a person with the spiders that stayed in the car.
Yeah, so we did have. So we had. The whole family were arachnophobics. Why they thought glamping was a good idea, I don't know. But they didn't tell me that there was a spider in the dome. They slept in their car. I mean, there could be a spider. There's spiders in my car, so like I don't know what they were thinking. Yeah. And then they went home, and I ended up refunding them because I thought, like, they didn't get the experience they were meant to. They didn't ask for a refund, but
it saved us from getting a bad review.
Yeah.
And so for me, I'd much rather not have the money and get a good review than have that bad review, because what's the first thing that people do is to go and look at the reviews of the place, and if they go, yes, granted, it might just be one bad review versus many, but I know how the human psyche is, and they look and they go, there's a bad review. They got spiders. They must have spiders everywhere. So we'd rather mitigate that and not have that.
You do know we do have spiders everywhere.
Like, I know we've got spiders everywhere. Yeah.
Yeah, the cat's out the bag now, guys. Remember, this is going online. No, I think you're entirely right. I think this is a recurring theme that's come up with quite a few of the different guests we've had on the podcast as to whether or not it's worth having a kind of reception style greeting and a show around the site, or whether it can be operated remotely. And you can absolutely do both without a shadow of a doubt. But I think having that kind of on-site presence, like you say, not only warms customers up a bit, but I think also justifies slightly higher nightly rates as well, because you're just delivering that slightly extra level of service that people would otherwise not get if they were picking the key up from a lockbox, for example, and just reading through a welcome pack. It just makes them feel that little bit more luxurious, I think. So I was having a read through your website ahead of our chat today, and I noticed on there that you make note of the fact that you welcome people with disabilities and neurodivergent people, and you encourage them to get in touch ahead of time so that you can make sure you accommodate their needs. It's not a particularly common approach in the glamping industry, and I think a lot of it is probably to do with the fact you've got the ability with domes to be a little bit more accessible than perhaps shepherd's huts would be or pods would be. But how have you found that? Do you find that's been quite a large part of business? How's the feedback been on that side of things for you?
So because you can drive right up to the dome, and I think that's a big selling point for a lot of people, because not obviously there's a lot of hidden disabilities. Not everybody who's disabled is in a wheelchair. So I think we've kind of gone for neurodivergent children. We've really encouraged the fact that it's a safe space for them. And the fact that you can drive right up to the dome, whereas a lot of glamping sites, you're parking in a separate place and wheelbarrowing things in or whatever. So we've made sure everybody can very easily get up to all the domes. They're all full-size doors, so you could get a wheelchair through them. But obviously some would work better than others. We've also got a bungalow holiday cottage, which is all on one level, so that's we've had disabled guests in there as well. But I mean, to be honest, we don't really necessarily know all the guests who have a hidden disability that come. It tends to be that we do get some neurodivergent children because it's a really safe space. There's nowhere they can run and get out. It's all very enclosed, as in the whole field is enclosed. They'd have to really go some to end up in the main road. But
there's lots of provisions for them. There's lots of play equipment. There's lots of things for them to do where they don't feel the need. And so they can run and be free and just explore the site and that. So I think by us doing that and not forcing them into a little corralled area, it has really played in our favour.
Yeah.
And giving them the freedom to be able to walk around, especially for neurodiverse kids, that they can go down to the honesty shop and buy something and come back, and the parents are not worried.
Yeah, because it's giving children the opportunity to do things that they wouldn't normally be able to do in everyday life, like take, a 4-year-old and a 5-year-old can go down together to a shop and pick up their ice lolly, take their 20p or whatever. And normally in life, you couldn't send a 4 and a 5-year-old off the shops by themselves. So we're trying to create this really safe environment that children and parents feel comfortable letting their children go and wander around. Like with the treasure hunt as well, the treasure hunt takes them around the whole site, so quite often the parents will just let the children go and do it by themselves, and then that's when they come and knock on our door and want the prize and things like that.
But the treasure hunt's a really good way to showcase all the different elements of the site, so that we're trying to get the people moving around and not just staying in one area and showing that you've got this whole entire area, utilise it, enjoy it.
Yeah, 100%. Fantastic way to approach it. And I think, again, it's a conversation that comes up a lot with us about how clients should market their site, and should they cater to families, or should it just be couples? And I think ultimately it depends on what kind of site you want to run and what kind of guests you want to welcome. But we always say, obviously, the wider you could potentially cast your net, the more clients you've got the opportunity to welcome. And obviously that's only going to potentially help your occupancy rate if you've got lots of different categories that feel like they can come and enjoy your site.
Yeah, it's something I slightly regret is the fact that we've just focused so heavily on families, because we get no couples. I could count on 2 hands maybe now how many couples we've had over the 8 years that we've done it, which then really reduces our midweek term time occupancy rates, because everyone's at school. So I think we're going to have to try and do something this year to encourage. We tried to sort of encourage a toddler market, so all those preschoolers, we got some soft play in. But again, a lot of those families have older children that are at school. So yeah, I think if I had the time again, I'd probably do couples.
You say that, but I think the couples market is also a difficult market, because there is so much interesting accommodation out there, and so whereas we get a lot of repeat customers, I think in the couples market, I know especially if I was in the couples market, I'd want to stay there, then stay there, then stay there, and not just get that repeat guests and that rapport, because most of our guests come back because the kids really want to come back.
Yeah, because the kids are just like, when are we going again? And they're like, oh yeah, okay, we better book it. But the kids are like, right, well, we need to go now. Like, when are we going? When are we going? When are we going? And nagging, and you like having that child nagging the parent is great.
For us. But that's why we're trying to get the toddler market.
Yeah, toddlers. Toddlers will feed in and they will keep coming back year on year, and it's more rewarding as well, because you get to see the children grow up, and you get to be part of that child's core memory for the rest of their life, that every year they came to Tractors Cream for their holiday.
Yeah, that's amazing. And yeah, that's an aspect I had never even considered before, so that was a lovely way to think about it. On the subject of repeat business, I wanna touch briefly on your online presence, because you are notable by your success online, and it's probably the area that I think most people struggle with when they get their site open, is keeping that consistency of online engagement up, because you've obviously got a fantastic level of subscribers on YouTube, and you seem to have really varied content, not just about your site, but also about the industry as a whole. So can you tell us a little bit about your kind of approach to how you engage with your clients in the market online, and why if you know, you think you might have been as successful as you have been in generating that kind of traffic?
So we just literally started the YouTube channel because such random crazy stuff happened when you run a glamping site, that I just thought, it'd be quite fun to document it and then look back when we're older and the kids could look back on it. And then what we found is that guests who were watching it then got to know us, and so they felt like they already knew us by the time they arrived, and then they're like, oh, it's like coming to visit friends, and they would quote me back things that happened and like that I'd completely forgotten about, and it's so bizarre how they just felt like they knew us before and we didn't know anything about them at all. So that's worked really well, having a virtual tour as well, so that people can see exactly what they're getting, as opposed to beautiful pictures on the website where you don't know whether that's perfectly accurate or not, do you? Whereas when someone's filming the tour of it, that tends to be a really accurate representation of what someone's going to visit. And then, we then just started documenting all the build projects, particularly the domes and our A-frame cabin that we built. And it just kind of, then we started getting questions from the glamping industry side of it, where people would just randomly ask me, questions about how to build a dome base, or questions about like anything to do with building a glamping, like solar, septic tanks, that sort of thing. And so then we just started kind of making fairly glamping related content as well as what was going on at the site. It's kind of become a bit of a mishmash of both, really.
But then we also then started going visiting other sites, because we really enjoy speaking to other glamping site owners and telling their story. And you can learn so much from other glamping sites. And then we thought, well, this would be a good way for us to start showcasing them, documenting, so that people can get inspiration from other sites as well as just ours. And so that's why we now try and go and visit a number of sites every year, just so that we can tell their story and showcase them as well.
Yeah, there's so many I want to go and visit. I've got like a list of different sites that I aspire to go and film.
Time.
Time and distance and things like that. Like, I'd love to go to the States for a couple of weeks and go and film a load of some more content over there. But
right. We've got loads here in the UK.
I know you've had a chat with Nick Perzo, our former Glam Protect employee, who's now over in, I think it's Canada rather than the States, isn't it? And I see the pictures of some of the stuff they're doing over there, and just think, wow, like the scenery and stuff in some of those kind of national parks and areas that they're looking to develop are just staggering. And yeah, you're right. It doesn't take long to find yourself down the rabbit hole once you start looking into different opportunities, and all of a sudden you've spent 3 hours clicking on different types of accommodation, and you've plotted a 3,000-mile road trip that you can never afford to go on. So it's lovely to have first-hand accounts of those sorts of things and actually be able to see it for yourself, and not just from a kind of marketing spiel perspective from the owners. So it certainly seems to be bringing you a lot of success. So congratulations on that front.
Thank you.
Thanks very much for joining me today. I think we'll wrap it up there. We will put all of your contact details in the episode description, along with a link to your YouTube channel as well. So if anyone is listening or watching and would like to find out a little bit more, or is planning a little trip down to Somerset, look no further. We'll put all the details down here. If you've got any questions, please pick the phone up. Before I let you go, though, we do tend to end every episode just asking for one little pearl of wisdom from each of our guests, if possible. So have you got a nugget of advice that you would offer to somebody who's just starting out, one particular thing that you would say would see them in the right direction?
Have they started, or are they thinking about starting?
If they're just setting out, like if they're just thinking, glamping something I want to do, what would be your first piece of advice?
I would say, like, it is a lifestyle choice. It's not just a job. It's not just a business. It's not a huge money-making scheme. So if you think it's like a way to make loads of money, most of the time, I mean, there are outliers, obviously, but most of the time, it's not going to be a huge money spinner. It is more the lifestyle choice, the what it's like for our kids growing up. Like, it's amazing for them. They make new best friends every couple of days. They're learning entrepreneurial skills. They're getting involved in the day-to-day running. They're learning a work ethic. So from that side of things, if it's the lifestyle that you want, amazing. If you're in it to make loads of money,
you can still make it work.
You can still make it work.
You definitely can.
You definitely can. But
that's a fantastic piece of advice. There is absolutely, obviously, money to be made in the market, but yeah, like anything, unless you're really passionate about it, that's going to come across to your guests. And I think embracing it as your lifestyle and making it your day to day, like, you can't fake that with guests. Like that comes across loud and clear when people really care. Fantastic piece of advice. Listen, guys, thank you very much for joining me. I'm sure we will catch up again soon, or if we don't bump into each other again at another exhibition. If you've got the boss's sites on the North Coast 500 on your hit list, let us know. I'm sure we'll be able to sort you out a stay up here.
Yeah, it's definitely on Brian's list of places to go.
Very much so.
If I'm down in Somerset and down your way, I'll certainly give you guys a shout. Thank you very much for coming.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. So nice to chat to you.
Bye-bye.